Hello and welcome back to our Pokemon Go theme park. We are pretty much wrapping up Pallet Town this episode and deciding to do something a little bit different for the final little section of the town. So in Pallet Town, of course, there's the default 3 buildings, the 2 homes, and Professor Oak's kind of laboratory. So it's a little boring, I guess, to have just so little structures around, especially when you're doing a theme park. And I really wanted to do something, I guess, a little bit, it might be a small touch, but I wanted to add this structure here. And this structure is going to be like a little, partly modern, partly traditional Japanese, you could say almost like a food stall, something that you might see a small ramen shop onto along the street, where they provide almost like street side goodies in Japan. Now, I'm not really referencing anything directly when building this, so it's kind of just a loose interpretation from my mind on what would basically how this thing would work. And it took me a while to do. You know, I haven't really done many Japanese builds in a Planet Coaster, so I'm a little slow when it comes to this kind of theme set, but I think it turned out fairly well. A lot of kind of wooden elements, and getting kind of these elements to work together with the plaster, and then also with a little bit of the modern elements of the white kind of columns. So we're gonna go ahead and Japanese structures, or at least kind of more traditional ones, they tend to have a lot of wooden elements just kind of bracing the lower half of like a section of a wall, and then the upper half, it can have some like either some window elements and some other loose, I guess, shapes or more square elements at that point. And you know, the Japanese kind of structures don't really emphasize more so the windows of a building, or viewing sections, or even the doors. I mean, the doors kind of in most areas might look more like a wall section than an actual entryway. I think they kind of emphasize more of the roof, and also they try and emphasize, I think, just the fine woodwork that goes into these magnificent kind of older buildings. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to capture here. It's not, you know, 100% perfect, and really if I wanted to do this properly, I would always suggest people to look at references first, things like that, unlike what I'm doing here. But you know, sometimes I enjoy the challenge of working on something just from my head, and so, you know, that's why I'm doing it essentially kind of the wrong way. I'm putting a layer of white behind some of the wood sections just to basically provide a little bit of a color break from the upper and lower section, and then we'll end up even backfilling some of the square elements with the some wall tiles that might, because they're a little bit of a lighter tan than the normal wall elements, it can actually, I guess, kind of look like the thin paper that makes up some of their structures, doors, and things like that. Now, this whole area where the road kind of ends and kind of trails off by Professor Oak's lab, I've never been 100% happy with it. Even just laying out this road here and how it's at an angle, it really just, it goes nowhere. And so this episode is a lot of me kind of struggling with what to do with this area, how to make it work with the rest of the park, you know, and if we add a building here, how does that work with the rest of the park, and trying to balance the 3 buildings and getting that to work. Here, this is the tiles that I mentioned a bit ago, trying to inlay those into the wall just to bring in a little bit of a different color. We're going to leave this tiled section on the little outcropping where the restrooms are, just because, you know, wooden roofs, not really, I mean, they had them in Japan, and they're relatively common, but they definitely use more like ceramic roofing pieces for some more grand buildings. And so, you know, wooden up top, and then just a little bit of the ceramic element on the sides. Though, you know, I can't wait until we actually get to change the color of elements, because then I could have actually made it like a really dark kind of tile set, and I think that would have looked a little bit nicer than this more, I guess, Spanish theme that we have going on there. The ladder, by the way, is really good for using some wood trim in there, because it's definitely different than using these driftwood planks. And, you know, maybe, hopefully, with the fantasy theme set that's coming out, we'll get maybe a straighter version of this driftwood plank, because the driftwood plank is one of the most versatile, I guess, objects in the game to build with right now. But, I mean, it's an obvious, just a random chunk of wood. It's not straight, it's not, you know, fashioned in a way that looks like it should be part of a really fine building. From a distance, it kind of sells it, but, you know, up close, you're just like, whoa, that's obviously just a piece of wood. Here, adding some side decking for potentially, you know, an area to put some seating. I'm running into this weird glitch here with my game, and I don't know what's causing it, but I don't know, the facilities here are off the ground, but my grid for the pathing wants to snap to ground level, and so it's actually dragging the pathing down and causing it to sink into the floor. I don't know what's causing that. It's kind of doing the same thing at my roller coaster station. It's really bugging me. I can't really fix it. I don't really know if it's a issue with the current alpha, since they messed with the path tool a little bit between Alpha 1 and Alpha 2. It could be fixed for Alpha 3 this month. Who knows? I don't know if anyone else is having the problem, and if you are, and if you know a way to fix it, please let me know down below, because it's really hard to build structures that have a foundation if my path tool is basically fighting me the whole time. Basically, with the rest of this structure, you know, I'm having a real hard time with the road and placing it and finding a good spot for it. So I ended up doing a little bit of skip here because it was just taking me too long to decide, and it's moved off towards the bridge, and at this point we are going to make some tables and chairs to put on the deck where the guests can eat at. The tabletop is just, you know, driftwood planks lined up in a nice square, and then the legs of the table is just a barrel. It's pretty standard. I wasn't trying to make it match any specific theme. These chairs, you know, trying to make a proper chair with a back with the tile set that we have is a little hard, but going with kind of this driftwood back to the chair at a slight angle and some iron working to kind of give what would be an armrest onto either side, on top of our pretty standard wood element here that we use a lot as detail pieces as just the seat. It turned out relatively well. So it makes it kind of look like a lighter section of wood, which I think contrasts a little bit better to the tables than if we were just going to use driftwood the whole way, and driftwood was slightly too big for what we were after. This is going to end up being like a little square wooden umbrella. Kind of wish we had more cloth elements to work with, as, you know, putting up curtains or anything like that I think would be pretty cool for a park. But doing this, I didn't realize these metal columns are actually not in the center of the grid. They are on a corner, and in doing so, when I built this piece here, I was just like, the original plan was to make the corner, copy it over, and rotate it, and it would have been done much quicker. But because I didn't realize, because the grid is actually below ground here, that it wasn't going to line up, I ended up having just to build this whole thing by hand. So it really extended the build time for this element, which isn't too bad. You know, 10 minutes or so to throw this thing together, but it was just, you know, 10 minutes that I probably should have saved myself on. And also, it's not really the best looking kind of wooden umbrella that I've seen people do. I've seen some people do some really nice clean ones. You know, if I spent a little bit longer time, I could have probably made it a little bit more clean, but, you know, I want to get Pallet Town pretty much wrapped up this episode so we can start working on Viridian City, and then maybe a new roller coaster So here, just testing it, making sure it's kind of roughly to scale to the table, and I think it is. It is overhanging the table. It's just slightly larger than it, so I think it works well enough for what I'm going to be using it for. They're not going to be over every table because I think that would just be too much wood, but it'll be over a few of them. And you know, it being part of a grid, I can save this piece for later, use it for other little outcroppings, and it would be fine. Gonna go ahead and put also our wooden fence that we've been using pretty much throughout the town here to surround the deck area. Even though we have this metal one from the path itself, it doesn't wrap all the way around here, and so I'm gonna have to throw in the wooden elements just to make the whole deck make sense in the long run. But I'm happy with the overall space this is taking up. I think it filled in a nice little section of, I guess, the Pallet Town side of the river compared to Viridian City that we're going to be doing next. And I know there should be a forest in between. If you guys haven't seen last episode where I kind of touched on, the forest is being skipped over due to we just don't have the space required to make a full forest. At the end of the path, I got rid of that little jut, and I just made a square red plaza, basically almost like a pier. So southern part of Pallet Town, they kind of have an element where you can get into the ocean, and so that's why I guess a pier kind of look kind of works for me. I like the overall shape. At this point, my game is going to crash here in about 20 seconds, so I lose a bunch of footage, and we're basically going to fill in some details, and I can just go over that in real time. So I'm going to go ahead and kick that over to current me, and we'll go ahead and look at some finishing details in a non-speed up fashion. So here we go. So here we are with pretty much I would say it's 90% done with the detailing. I could do a lot more with rocks along the river stream-esque elements here, but I'm kind of going to save that for later, as I feel like getting the bigger pieces done probably should take priority, as you know, it's the most entertaining thing to watch and look at anyways. So here is Pallet Town. This is, yeah, as I said, pretty much done beyond just a few minor tweaks and stuff that I want to do. But I hope you guys kind of enjoy the process of making this from Ash's house to Gary's house, you know, Professor Oak's lab, and then there's just little restaurant plaza down here. Now, the plaza itself, we're going to have a bigger restaurant in Viridian City, something a little bit more proper and maybe definitely bigger with more seating. But I feel like, you know, having something over on this side near the water's edge might look really nice once we add water. Again, gonna wait for Alpha 3 before we even worry about water, because you know there's no point in putting down all this fake water if I'm just gonna have to remove it once Alpha 3 comes out. Anyways, we're gonna go ahead and zoom in on this pier a little bit. We have some stone benches with wooden backs that I made, and just copying them around, again making them into a building makes that super useful. I added some small planters with kind of the tall part of the pine tree. You can see how much of the tree is actually underneath the pier with these, and I think this whole area turned out well. If you guys want, I might be able to possibly build a covered section, at least over part of this in general, just so there's a building on it. But right now I'm relatively okay with it just being this open plaza. There's not really many elements with Planet Coaster right now that we can do a plaza or something proper with. You know, I kind of really can't wait for them to add a plaza tool or something to do with the current path tool, but right now everything feels very point A to point B without a central gathering place to you know, have people walk around in kind of a loose manner. This is very, you know, streamlined, and I don't, you know, I was talking to Silver a little bit about that on his latest video, and it's definitely something I think that bothers a lot of people here recently. But anyways, let's see. We added some greenery back here just to kind of tie it in, some just more tall grass areas for people to go catch some Pokemon around town. You know, again, this is a Pokemon Go theme park, so, you know, having those spots around, I think, is going to be pretty important, even though Pallet Town didn't have any actual tall grass to speak of. Down here, just, you know, a little bit of a section for people to walk around along the water. That's not, you know, it's a little bit more natural. It's just a kind of a gravel dirt path back here with some benches. You know, if you want to get some food up here, again, this is almost more of a snack bar kind of thing. So it's not really meant to be, you know, your dinner location by any means. And so, you know, people can come in here, get their snacks, and leave. This, by the way, is the path glitch I was talking about earlier in this episode, where the path is just stuck down here, but when they approach the shop, they actually climb back up. I don't know how to fix this. I even tried raising the shop higher off the ground, but it still was always that little bit lower than where the floor should be. And it's something that's bothering me kind of a whole lot. In the speed build, I didn't touch upon it, but I turned the kind of patio for the restaurant the white stone, and that's just due to contrast reasons. Having it a wooden patio makes sense, but it doesn't make sense when every element on top of that patio is wooden as well. If I had maybe some modern chairs, modern tables, and some colorful parcels to put on top, you know, I could have kept it as wood, but I think this is pretty much the best compromise to make, because it makes the tables and little details kind of stand out from a distance, and I think that's going to be an important element to try and do in a theme park, especially, you know, I think most people play at a zoomed out distance anyways. Now, to wrap up this episode, I did want to show you kind of the final little adjustment that I did to Gyarados over here. The ending wasn't quite smooth. I just didn't overall like it. So after the loop, instead of just looping and turning straight back, it does kind of do a little bit of a figure 8 here. It does slow it down a little bit more. It makes the ending a little bit more smooth. And then, of course, the track goes back through the loop, interacting with itself even more. So I think it's a little bit more of a successful ending. And I hope you guys agree as well. Yeah, we'll just save the final ride through of that thing for when the park is complete. You guys have already ridden it once, and if you haven't seen that, you can go ahead and watch the Gyarados episode. But that will pretty much be locked away until then. And there's some more final detailing that I need to do over in this area as well. Now, I don't know if I went over this, but I went ahead and threw in the little kind of wall at the base of Professor Oak's home. This would be in the anime. You know, it was just this little brick element down there. It's not quite this long, but I think I had to make it fit the terrain. I've been having some problem with the coaster. People walking up here and then just walking away, almost as if there's a pathing bug going on with it. But I need to observe that more to basically finalize that issue. So, if you guys enjoyed this episode, I think this is going to do us for Pallet Town, and at this point we'll be working on the next kind of section, a little bit more city-like. Definitely going to contrast, I think, fairly well with the light suburb area here. So if you guys enjoyed the episode, feel free to leave a like so I know to keep on doing what I'm doing. Go ahead and leave a comment on what you want to see next in Viridian City. I know people have been clamoring for a gym. I want to make a gym. I don't know if I should make it based off an anime or based off the game or maybe Pokemon Stadium. You know, something maybe a little bit cooler looking than just a box. And go ahead and check out my other videos if you're new. Subscribe if you're new. And until then, I'll see you guys next time with some more wonderful Planet Coaster.